Welcome to She Wears the Pants, the podcast where women build companies that can hold their calling. I'm your host, Ashley Deland, business advisor, multi-business founder, and startup investor, guiding women to scale with structure, strategy, and self-mastery. Every week, we go behind the scenes of high-growth, women-led brands to talk about the real work, the identity evolution, the leadership required, and the strategy that actually sustains success. If you're ready to build a business and life you love, you're in the right room. All right, so welcome to She Wears the Pants podcast hosted by me, Ashley Deland. Today's guest is the phenomenal Sarah Baldeo, and Sarah is a neuroscientist, a TEDx speaker, and the CEO of ID Quotient. In 2023 alone, Sarah has graced more than 50 stages, gave over 24 keynotes, was featured on 960 AM radio, and more recently was nominated for the DMZ 2024 Women of the Year Award and the Top 25 Women of Influence Award. Sarah holds an executive MBA from the University of Toronto, a neuroscience degree from York University, and certifications from Princeton and Ryerson, and also has been a guest lecturer at the University of Toronto Rotman School of Business. So Sarah, welcome.
Thank you.
I'm happy to have you. I was just transparently saying to Sarah that we've been talking for about an hour now, and I wish we could have recorded the pre-conversations. There's so much value.
It's a secret sauce. It's the secret sauce stuff, Ashley. We can't just be, giving it away. But I feel like I've known you forever, for sure.
I know, I agree. And I love it and I don't even know how we got connected, but it was through Instagram. And it was one of those moments where it was like, hey, and it's like, hey, do I know you in like this lifetime, like a past lifetime? It's like one of those serendipitous moments. And then from that, revealing that we know so many people in common is just
unbelievable. To know family, friends, and people who have been like such important part of my life, important part of your life and your childhood. They say the universe works in mysterious ways. I think the universe works in very deliberate ways. I really do.
Yeah,
I do.
I agree. I didn't have the chance to ask you this. Are you a woman of faith? Like, are you a God believer, universe, divine?
I actually grew up in an extremely religious family. My family is Caribbean and South American and like super, super mixed, but so many people in my family are pastors, deacons, so I would go to church 3-4 times a week. In my adult life, I think I've become much more spiritual. I also have started to feel that it's really important that if I'm attending a church or a mosque or a synagogue or wherever, that I really believe in what I'm listening to. And so my mother is Jewish, my grandmother's Jewish, by association, I'm also Jewish. And then the other side of my family is Christian. And so for me, I really grew up with so many different faith systems.
I love that.
And I think that's why I really now have started releasing myself from this idea of like, this is what I believe. This is the doctrine. This is the catechism, that this is what it is. Because I think that so many faiths have elements of deep truth that connect with me. And so that's why I say, people ask me, they're like, what are you? I'm a human who has a system of beliefs that have evolved through multiple, religion is a creation of humans. Faith exists outside of that. So I often say, I grew up in a very traditional home, going to church a lot. And now I don't.
Yeah.
I do not.
I love that. We actually have similarities on that as well. I grew up as a JW, a Jehovah's Witness, which is like incredibly, like I'll get, hammered for this, but it's incredibly cult-like. So, there were so many rules to this organization. And if you broke the rule, then God turned against you. And that was just, God's like the white guy in the sky and you need to obey him and all these rules. and we ended up getting excommunicated from like generationally around the world for just the stupidest things. In the family, it all differs. For me, it's because my sisters got caught smoking. My mom thinks something else. My grandmother thinks something else, one of those. But we got excommunicated. And obviously, it was the best thing to ever happen to me. But it took me years and years and years to start even communicating with God and realizing that actually, oh, that conversation is within me. My office stares at a church all day long, and I got this office on purpose because those are my conversations. But knowing that I don't have to go across the street to his house because his house is within me. And even at that, like, slowly, maybe God's a woman. So I'll just put that out there. But yeah.
Maybe this, like, I talked to my son about this because he's gone to Catholic school the entire time that we've been in Toronto. He started off in Montessori and then we kind of switched and we're like, no, having a concept of faith and spirituality is important. And I often say, did we ever consider that this is an invention of our minds and that perhaps there's this being or beings or energy that we as humans in our little tiny brains cannot conceive of? Like, is that possible that because we need to encapsulate something that is beyond our understanding, that we've put these limits?
Yeah.
We have stories, we have archetypes, we've created labels that make sense for us and help us stay connected. But it's totally possible that multiple faith traditions are all valid. And that, and I think that was one of the reasons I really struggled with Judaism, Catholicism, and Christianity in my own childhood, because I didn't like this notion that if you don't believe this, you are worthless and you're like damned and you are to be vilified. And I thought that can't possibly be true. But I mean, the world is too big for them.
Yeah.
Are you saying only these people in this geographic area that were exposed to Judeo-Christianity are valid? Because that's kind of disturbing. Only that little pocket of the world. And, if you read the Bible, there's no talking about going on tour. So what does that mean? And that, I think, became a big part of what makes sense for me, that this is a huge globe. People exist everywhere. Multiple traditions of faith and spirituality can be valid and should be valid. And I can't align with, you have to believe this or you don't matter.
Mm-hmm.
It's really, really hard for me as I try to be compassionate, and there's no compassion in that.
You also have such an interesting view, right? Because you're a neuroscientist and you also have such a depth of knowledge on AI and technology. Can you tell us a little bit about how you got into this world, maybe of just starting in entrepreneurship? Like, where were you before? How did you break the corporate reins, step into this scary journey of entrepreneurship?
So, like most children, first generation Canadians, so I'm first generation Canadian. My parents immigrated from Jamaica and South America in the 70s, and they waited a really long time to have me because they had no money. They didn't have money for a child. So they waited until their 30s, which is a little bit late back then to have kids. And they had a vision. You could be a doctor, you could be a lawyer. These are the real jobs, Sarah. And little Sarah wanted to be a singer.
Oh.
Little Sarah wanted to be a performer. This comes full circle. So that was my dream. And they said, that's a nice dream. That's cute. You can go, you can train at, Royal Conservatory of Music, you can take piano, you can take vocal lessons, but it's not a job. Okay. That's not a career. You need to be, we need to justify everything we sacrificed to come here. So you could be born here. Otherwise, what does it even matter? So what a weight for humans to carry, right? And I think we can kind of all relate to the weight that our parents put on us. There's always a weight. So I decided, my grandfather was a psychiatrist. And my grandfather was quite well-known psychiatrist in Pennsylvania. He published lots of research on drug abuse and addiction abuse and domestic violence and how to approach these things from a psychiatric perspective. And then I thought at one point I was going to become a psychologist, but that was an arts degree. That was not good enough. So I said, I'm going to go into neuroscience. Cool, fine. I just start out pre-med. I'm going to become a doctor. I'm going to become a neurosurgeon. That's what I did. So I went to school, finished my thesis, and I was actually getting ready to do like my postdoc graduate work at McMaster, got a scholarship, got accepted, got someone who was going to mentor me, like great professor, walked into the lab, and I kid you not, Ashley, I looked at the lab and I was in a neuroscience lab. So I was surrounded by like animals. And I just had this moment of what am I doing here? Why am I here? What am I doing? I don't want to be here. This is not for me. I do not want to spend the next 8 years of my life doing this. And definitely the little entrepreneur voice said, you could make way more money doing something else
that you love.
So there was that little capitalistic voice. So by the good fortune of the universe, I was scouted by a company that designed risk model algorithms for Scotiabank. And the CEO was a very quirky gentleman who I did not love working for, but he believed that a neuroscientist who had, published this great thesis work on the cerebral cortex was going to have useful insights about building user experiences and effective algorithms to protect the things.
Of course.
That's how I have to thank him for believing in me. So that's how I left kind of pre-med neuroscience. I had worked in research labs. I was doing tons of research-based work. I left that and I transitioned over into corporate, and I was 19 years old. So I was a child. I was very, very young. I started my corporate work. They were supportive and, me finishing up my thesis work. And so that was my first kind of foray into the corporate space. And I think, I started my first company that was about innovation and digital transformation when I was like maybe 21. And I would do consulting on the side. So it's a side hustle situation. And then I worked for a series of really big Fortune 100 companies. Like I worked at Gartner, I worked at Ceridian Dayforce, I worked at Salesforce. And I was a managing director at Deloitte, and then I became a partner at CGI. And, I worked at a big consumer reporting agency in the C-suite. And so throughout all those years of my corporate life, I founded 4 different companies. So I founded a marketing company. I founded an online catering company that I exited and cashed out of. I, founded a company that did brand design, like literally just designing logos and websites for people. And that first transition from medical sciences to tech is really where I learned to code.
Interesting.
I learned to code. I learned to be, a user experience designer. I learned to architect literally like amazing applications and to leverage artificial intelligence. So I've been building AI applications for a long time, almost 20 years now. And then as I was doing that, I always had a business. So at this point in my life now, people ask, when did you decide to become an entrepreneur? I said, no, I think I was always an entrepreneur. I always had a business. When I was at Deloitte, I had my own business. I went into it and I told them, I'm going to come on board. I'm going to join as a managing director. I'm really appreciative of the opportunity, but I own equity in an important company that I helped build and create, and I'm not giving it up. I'm not going to do anything that's a conflict of interest, but I'm not giving it up. And when I went to CGI, I said the same thing. And so I often encourage entrepreneurs, it sounds really nice. Just quit corporate and go full force ahead and be an entrepreneur. Most successful entrepreneurs have a corporate salary while they are building. I encourage people, that doesn't mean you're a failure. It takes time for you to, scale your business to where you want it to be, to replace and I would say far outstrip what you're earning in a corporate environment. But you don't have to be in a rush to do that. And there's no reason to think you're a failure if you have, if your vision is your side hustle.
Yes.
Smart entrepreneurs always diversify their income streams. Everybody tells you have multiple income streams. You should have multiple income streams. And at some point in your path, that might be a corporate salary. That's not a failure. That is effective cash flow planning. That is using your head to plan your cash flow and to invest that money. So like I do mentorship at UCLA and I say to people, how much money do you spend on dinner a month? Do you spend $1,000 on dinner? We'll take that $1,000 and invest it into marketing for your business. Take that $1,000 and get some additional certification. Become a certified career coach. Pay for Google ads for your website. I don't know. You can do that. There's nothing stopping you. And I do think there's this sentiment of either I'm 100% an entrepreneur or I'm not an entrepreneur.
Yeah, the one or the other, the black and white situation, right? And I feel like a lot of people are in that corporate and they start to get what you call that capitalism idea or in that, but it's actually just that deep down knowing that they're meant for more potential, more possibility and doing it on themselves. Like they have that, those two thoughts go against one another and you can coincide them where they can still be in corporate and they can still be leaning towards that entrepreneur lifestyle. Sometimes they just need to hear somebody give them permission to do so, right? That's a big thing.
Yeah.
That's what you just provided.
I also think that not everyone is an entrepreneur. And that's okay. It is true. I have a few good friends who they're in the C-suite, they're crushing it at like these huge multi-billion-dollar companies. They grew up with parents who were entrepreneurs. And for them, entrepreneurship is not adventure or excitement or having control of your own destiny. For them, entrepreneurship is instability and chaos and working 24/7. And it's kind of like what we talked about before. I'm a city person. I bloom in an urban environment. That's Sarah. It is not everyone, and it doesn't have to be everyone. And the city is not better than, the suburbs. That's not the way it is. And so I often say to people, there are people who want a nice corporate job and who want to work till 65 and cash out on their long-term incentive plan. And there's nothing in us as a society that needs to, demonize those people for following the role that makes sense for them. For me, that's hell. For someone else, that's happiness. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I do think, entrepreneurship is very glorified. It's very sexy. It's very glorified because the wealthiest people are entrepreneurs.
Yeah, you have to have a certain amount of crazy to be an entrepreneur. There's no doubt about that. Like these are, and it's hard to relate. Like for me, I'm very lucky as you are to be married to an entrepreneur because otherwise I don't know if you would understand the chaos that comes with going after your own dreams with so much focus, discipline, and determination. You have to be a little bit crazy to do it. And the irony is like the more successful you get, the crazier it gets until you get to a place of like delegation. But yeah, there's a mindset that comes with having to be an entrepreneur. There's no plan B, in my opinion. There's no plan B.
I remember during COVID when I quit my corporate job and I had a very nice title and lovely, like life was from the perspective of my parents and my grandparents. What are you doing? What is wrong with you? I remember my grandmother, she lives in the US and she called me and she's like, I don't understand you. And I'm the only granddaughter. So what do you mean? And she said, you have all this education. You were a VP before you were 30. You have achieved so much by your own blood, sweat, and tears. What are you doing? Why are you taking this chance? And I said to her, it's not the first time I've taken a chance. It's not the first time I've built a company. And I really hope it won't be the last time. And I am going to do this because I have thought it out. I have planned for it. And I will very transparently share, I didn't plan for a lot of things. Like, I didn't plan to get sued. I got sued. I didn't plan for that. But that experience really illuminated for me how to structure my business and my future businesses in ways that could be protected, how to structure my wealth in a way that could be protected. Um, and I'm so glad that I quit. And I'm so glad that I quit right in the middle of COVID, right as I was doing my executive MBA. I mean, people thought I was nuts. They're like, I don't understand. And this was almost 4 or 5 years ago. And they said, okay, so you're a lone parent. You have full custody of your kid. You have no financial support of any sort. It's you. You're the person. What are you doing? You shouldn't do that. You have to stay in a traditional corporate role because it's security. And now it's COVID. And you're doing your executive MBA, and now you have to homeschool your kid who's, in like whatever, grade 4 or 5. And I said, I have to do this. It's not even I want to do it. I have to do this. I have to do this, and I have to do it now. And things are probably going to go wrong. I know they're going to go wrong. And they did. They did go wrong. But I often try to advise people, don't assume because your business idea has failed or, you're struggling, like, don't assume you're a failure. I think there's a statistic says every successful entrepreneur has failed at it, on average 7 businesses before their first successful business, something like that. It's like, yeah.
Yeah,
So
embrace and invite that failure. Literally, you get way more lessons learned through your failures than your successes. And that is just a huge mindset that I would say women in business, but everybody in business needs to learn, is that we're so fearful of making the mistakes. But it's the easiest and fastest way to get over the obstacle and then learn how to do it right the second time around. So I'm glad you're talking about that. I want to go into the fact that you have had so much success, right? In corporate world and in entrepreneurship. You are a legit woman powerhouse. How do you manage success?
So historically, I totally neglected myself. So historically, in big four consulting, it's the most lucrative. I mean, it's just exorbitant amounts of compensation. It's fun. It's fun. You're traveling. You get, all the accolades, and you get to have this nice fancy title. I historically would juggle my business, my child's, my work, and I work on average 90 hours a week for a very, very, very long time. And I would sleep 3 hours a night.
Oh,
And that was my life from probably age 17 to, I'm 38 now, so age 17 to probably like 36. I only recently started sleeping more. I drink a lot of coffee. I drink a ton of coffee, a lot of coffee. But my therapist and I have had this conversation. I am addicted to achieving my crazy, gigantic, bold, audacious dreams. Like, one of my good friends, she's an accountant, and she says, you are the person that does the things that other people dream about doing. And I thought, that is like the nicest compliment. Shout out to Joyce for saying that to me. I said, that is the nicest compliment. Because a lot of the times as an entrepreneur, people tell you you're neglecting yourself. You're not prioritizing your mental health. You need to turn your phone off. Why are you working on vacation? And the truth is that, yes, you may have to do those things. And when it is your blood, sweat, and tears, and when it is your business, it's your capital, it's your baby, there's a lot of sacrifice. There's so much mental, emotional, physical, financial. There's so much sacrifice. I think now, within the past 2 years, I have scaled my businesses to a point where I started to prioritize stillness. It's just stillness. And so I have to force myself on my calendar. I block days. I block 2 days, 2 to 3 days in every week. And I color them in. I color them blue because it reminds me, like, I have my digital calendar, but I also have like a huge, crazy calendar on the wall here beside me. And I color in these days and I say, these are days where I'm not scheduling meetings. I'm not committing to media, TV, keynotes, nothing. These are days. And these are going to be days where I'm going to make a choice. It's just going to be floater days. And sometimes I end up going through hundreds of invoices that I need to approve on that day.
Yes.
It doesn't always work out, but these are my still days. These are my days where I can sit in my backyard and just journal. And my personality is that I don't work really well with having this is my mental health day. This is my therapy day. I don't work well like that, because if I don't feel that I'm going to be present in therapy, I don't go. I actually email my therapist and I say, I don't feel that I'm going to be showing up in therapy today because I need to focus on something for my business that I'm passionate about and is giving me tons of joy and adrenaline right now. So if I come to therapy, I really will not be present. Can we reschedule? And obviously, I give her enough time. And that is so counter to everything we're told, right? But I feel such a sense of control over my calendar. And that is in direct contravention to what my calendar was before. And so for me now, at this juncture in my life, it's the control over my calendar and the control over doing simply what I feel like when I feel like it.
Yep. And being in stillness, which is actually the real flex of it all. It is. I'm like you. This past year and a half, after just too many burnouts in a row, it really was that mindset development, that stillness, speaking to whatever spirit, I tend to communicate with. So it's pretty obvious that you are a true storyteller at heart. And part of your flex is that you know how to spark meaningful conversations and drive real change. What conversations these days do you find are coming up more and more? Like, what topics or conversations are you having?
I think there is a significant amount of fear around the pace of change. Just change is the only constant in life, obviously, but the pace of change is freaking people out. They are freaked out to the nth degree. Whether it is artificial intelligence and generative AI, whether it is politics, whether it is climate change, whether it is war that is going on. Change, like every industrial revolution, there's a change. There's a huge change. This right now, we're in the fifth industrial revolution. And so it's all about human beings and machines and kind of merging human beings and technology. I recently gave a keynote to an awesome big global pharma company. And I said, for the first time in human history, the pace of change of technology and knowledge has outstripped the pace of human ability to internalize that knowledge. And so we have a bit of a cognitive dissonance here, because we're learning and we're learning and we're learning and we're learning, but people can't keep up. And so I really feel like, there's a lot of if you visualize Abraham Maslow's hierarchy, right? So there's a pyramid, and on the bottom are basic needs like food and shelter and clothes. And then you go up the pyramid, and at the top is self-actualization and spirituality and discovering our greater purpose, etc. Because change is moving so fast, because people can't upskill fast enough, or not everyone can upskill fast enough, or pivot their businesses, or pivot what they do for work, you're getting everything crunched in this bottom of the pyramid. And people are consumed with just the most basic things. How do I afford my house? How do I pay for things? How do I eat? Can I count on political stability in my country and where I live? And so I think it comes back to the fear of, can I depend on a basic level of stability in my life so that I can access these more evolved conversations? And so it does centralize a lot around technology, but I feel like technology is the easiest one to pick on because there's this big conversation of, oh, technology is taking people's jobs. And the unpopular reality is that jobs always are rendered superfluous. Mm-hmm. Every time in history, there is a new invention. I sometimes tell this joke, and it's true. There was a person that used to take pebbles and walk down the street and throw them at your window, and that was your alarm clock. That was a real job. That's not a job anymore. There was a person that used to deliver like fresh milk to your door and be like a candlestick maker. There was a person that drove carriage. I mean, I think that the access to media perpetuates this fear because it doesn't feel good to know that your job is not needed anymore. That doesn't feel good. And I think there's so much fear mongering. It's so much fear mongering on the news that even if people had the capacity to overcome some of the challenges to that pace of change, they're just in survival mode. They're in survival mode, they're in fear mode, and they're making every single decision in their life from fear. Yeah. And when it's just neuroscience. When your reptilian brain, your limbic system is activated, it hijacks your higher level reasoning. That's literally what happens. It's like it just comes in and hijacks all of your rational thinking and logic and thought. You can't access your cerebral cortex, your frontal cortex, and then you're like, no, I'm being attacked. I'm being attacked. I need to defend myself. I have to defend myself. I'm being attacked, and it's hard to believe it, but we react the way we did thousands of years ago to a lion jumping on us is the way that we react now to somebody saying, you're not going to have a job, you can't feed your family. The human body reacts the same to those two threats. And so that conversation around fear and survival and fear mongering and uncertainty, and really how do people understand the science of what's happening to them? Mm-hmm. That conversation comes up every single stage I'm on. Every stage, every keynote, every time it's about fear and change. And it's been that way. I think last year, a lot of the discussions were around artificial intelligence. Probably 80% of my keynotes were about that. 20% were about neuroscience. This year, it's kind of flipped. And so companies are much more aware that not everyone is excited about change.
Of course. And talking about all of your stages and media appearances, you have a book tour coming up that I absolutely want to base on. So you're preparing to release your upcoming book, The Resilience Equation. So tell us a little bit about this book. What can we expect and how can we purchase it when it comes out?
So the title may change.
Oh,
that
okay.
That is one of the things.
You're first.
Yes, that is one of the things that happens when you are going through the publishing process. I really encourage anyone who is serious about writing a book. In Canada, there's 5 big publishers. This is the truth. There are 5 big publishers. You can self-publish, but there are 5 big publishers. Get yourself a great book agent. Like, get yourself a literary agent, because usually literary agents have worked in those publishing houses. They've represented the Giller Prize winners of the world. They understand how to navigate the business of publishing. It's a business. So the title may change. The book is focused on really this conversation that we just had. It is the neuroscience of resilience and survival. I think mental health, wellness, coping mechanisms are so crucial to supporting people. But in all of the dialogues that I have, I really hear so frequently this sentiment of, I don't have a neuroscience degree. I wish I could download what is in your brain, Sarah, and I could just apply that like a handbook into things that are happening. So that is what the book is going to be. And I do believe that education is the number one tool to equalize access to wealth, to equalize access to building wealth and creating generational wealth. And so my hope is that people will be able to have access to this information. So my agency that represents my book is Transatlantic. I have a great agent. If anyone is looking to find out what is happening, name changes, I have an existing book on Google Books called Own the Spotlight. And that is about the neuroscience of performing and actually performing as an introvert. So you might not believe it, but I am totally an introvert. I like, as I shared with you before we started recording, I like my space. I like being alone. It is a performance when you are on TV and commercials and you're performing. And that there is a way to create and architect that persona in an authentic way. It's still you, but it's a version of you. Right. Because, I can say very, very bluntly, there have been times before a keynote where I got really bad news, or I got news about my health, or maybe someone in my family, just things that I would love to just go in a cave and not speak to people. Right. But when you are a public speaker and a performer, or you're going on a set to film a commercial or do TV, you can't. Mm-hmm. I mean, you could, but I would not recommend it. And so, that wonderful word compartmentalization becomes really important, which there's also a chapter on that in the book. Compartmentalization and really understanding, what do I do? What do I do before I have to go into a high stakes environment and a disaster happens? How do I do that? So Own the Spotlight is on Google Books. The new book, which is upcoming, you can follow Transatlantic Agency on Instagram and hear all the exciting things that are happening. But I really believe that, I know when I was 18 and I left home and it was just Sarah, those nuggets of wisdom on the biology and the physiology of what was happening to me, even when I was told that, they found cancer cells in my body when I was like 6 months pregnant. These experiences, we talked about life and death experiences, living in a part of the city that had significant gun violence and crime when I was a teenager. Life shouldn't just be about surviving. Like, ideally, it should be about living. And I think that conversation of how do we get out of that survival mode? How do we tap into the superpowers of the human brain? Like, what if you could not panic every time something happened? That would be amazing. What if you didn't, break down when something happened and you had a feeling? You and I are both type A, so you had a feeling of control over your body and your hormones and your emotions. Like, as women, I think this is hugely important because our hormones are on a roller coaster. It's just reality. Every month, our hormones are on a roller coaster. And throughout the life cycle of a woman, and you're expected to show up as the same person and be as dependable and as accessible to all the stakeholders in your life that need you, regardless of what is happening to you. Okay, that's a superpower. Mm. It's pretty amazing that women can do that.
I mean, right?
I don't know if guys could do that. I don't, I'm not sure. I adore my husband. He's pretty even keeled dude. But we often joke, he's like, I don't think I could. Okay. You're on like a roller coaster the whole time. And, I would love to see the world evolve to a place that understood that and made space for that. Because I don't think I think we're not right now. We just argue about gender equity and pay equity and money. We don't talk about the fact that, okay, like we're not, that there's other nuances to motherhood. Or maybe if you're not a mother, but you're a woman, there's nuances that they can make it hard.
Yes, they can. Absolutely. Also, my little girl is going to give your little girl a shout out that she did go full circle and she ended up being a performer in her own way. So I have to bring light to that. Okay, so we're going to wrap this up with our signature She Wears the Pants question. Looking back on your journey of wearing the pants, what message do you want to relay for future generations of women in business?
Biggest takeaway, there is no glass ceiling. Just navigate life as if there is no glass ceiling. Navigate life as if you do not have enemies that are out to get you. You are not the victim. You are honestly going through life with a specific set of skills, a specific personality that you have control over what you do. You really do. Shit's gonna happen.
Yep.
It's Murphy's Law. Sometimes all the bad things will happen. Cancer, divorce, lawsuits, all of the things are going to happen. You're not a victim and you do have control. And I think everybody has different experiences of trauma. And so when you're navigating life, I often say, try to be empathetic, try to be kind. When you meet someone and they tell you their problems, don't say, I know exactly how you feel, because you don't. You don't know what they feel. Your brain is telling you, oh, this, here's a pattern. I recognize it. That is me. But try to navigate life that it is an adventure. It is a roller coaster. And you do have the ability to protect yourself. Like every human, every woman, everybody, you have the ability to protect yourself. And it's just a matter of kind of unlocking those superpowers in your brain and pushing yourself to that next level of evolution. Your life will be just absolutely amazing when you do that.
I love that. Power words to end off this amazing podcast. Sarah, where can people find you now that they're obsessed with you?
I am, as I shared with you, Ashley, I am leaving Toronto in, oh my gosh, like 4 or 5 days. So I'm officially relocating to beautiful, sunny Miami, Florida. But people can follow me on Instagram at the Sarah Baldeo. On Instagram, they can connect with me on LinkedIn. They can go to my website, www.sarahbaldeo.com, reach out to me. I'm not one of those people that ignores. I will answer, or someone on my marketing team will answer. But while I'm leaving Toronto, I am taking a piece of it in my heart with me over to the US. And yeah, I will occasionally come back and visit our beautiful, true north, strong and free.
Yeah, my goodness, Canada is going to miss you. Sarah, thank you so much for your time. You are just a woman filled with wisdom, and we wish you the best travels.
Thank you, Ashley.
You.
This was She Wears the Pants, where women rise into what they're meant to hold. If this episode moved you, changed you, or challenged you, send it to a woman you want to see rise. Make sure you're subscribed so you never miss an episode. And if you're ready for deeper strategy, identity expansion, and high-level support, you can find me on Instagram at Ashley Deland. Until next time, keep leading boldly, building intentionally, and becoming the woman your calling requires.